Hello, everyone, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and welcome to the review of Supergirl, the second film to be a part of the DC universe, or the DCU, if you will. This is the latest DC film to be a part of the, what you want to call it, the James Gunn universe of DC. And this film stars Millie Alcock as Kara Zor-El, or Supergirl, if you will. Also Ridley and Jason Momoa, just to name a few. This is directed by Craig Gillespie, who I'm very fond of his work. Going back to Lars and the Real Girl with Ryan Gosling. I think that was the early 2000s that came out. But he gave us the Fright Night remake, which wasn't as good as the original, of course, but it was watchable. And I, Tanya, and Cruella, most recently with Emma Stone. This film is loosely based on the comic book miniseries Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow by Tom King. And I just recently read that in preparation for the movie coming out. I never read that miniseries, and the miniseries is dark. It's very, very serious in its storytelling and some of the tones that were set in there. Now, it was still a Supergirl comic book in its core, but it had some real dark undertones in that miniseries. But as far as the film is concerned, we follow Supergirl, who travels across the galaxy on a murderous quest for revenge. Just to jump off here, the critics been tearing this movie apart. They have just demolished this film, and it kind of took away from my viewing experience, to be quite honest with you. Well, let me rephrase. It didn't take away from my viewing experience, but my anticipation going to see it. I was like, man, everybody can't be wrong. It must be some truth to what everybody is saying about this film. And so went, bought my ticket, bought my popcorn, my icy, sat down, watched it. I don't know what they're talking about. I honestly don't know what movie they were watching. Was this movie great? No. Was it the greatest superhero movie of all time? Absolutely not. But it was good. This was a very good movie. To say this was a Supergirl movie that a lot of people aren't familiar with that character. I went with my family, and they weren't familiar with the Supergirl character and her backstory and how she relates to Superman and, and all that ins and outs of things, and how she is incorporated in the DC universe and whatnot. So they didn't know. And I'm pretty sure a large contingent of people didn't know either. All of her backstory. Hence the reason to see the movie. Now, this isn't a true and blue origin story, even though we do get backstory in this film with Kara, but it's not a definitive origin story of Supergirl. And I appreciated it for that. I mean, we've seen Krypton explode how many times in movies? It's enough. We've seen it enough. And with that being said, we see it here too. we do get a flashback of that, but it's not like we spend an hour on Krypton. It's none of that. No, I don't know what they were expecting out of this movie. I got exactly what I expected to see out of this movie. I guess that's why I look at movies differently than a lot of people. I guess that's why a lot of people don't really gravitate to when I review a movie, because I'm always on the other side. I always look at it from a different perspective than most quote unquote critics, even though I'm not a critic per se. But this is precisely what I wanted out of this movie. And now, did I have problems with it? Yes, and I'm gonna go over some of my problems with it. But before I get to that portion of it, let's go through the positives. And there's a lot more positives than negatives. First and foremost, Millie Alcock. There was a lot of pushback on that. When she was cast, there was pushback on that casting decision because, oh, she's not attractive. She's not all that. I don't know what they're looking at. You know, I think she's a beautiful woman. I think she's a beautiful young girl. What is your point of reference for Supergirl? You know, I mean, really, who are you looking at to say like, oh, she's not what I envisioned? You want to go back to Helen Slater back in 1984 in that film? You want to go back to that, or you want to go back to the TV show with Melissa? Oh my God, why is her last name escaping me now? It'll come to me after I finish. But you want to go to that? Yeah, those were beautiful women too. But she is beautiful in her own right. She sets herself apart. Also, most recently, Sasha Calle, who portrayed her in the Flash movie. She was completely different from what we know from the Supergirl quote unquote model, you know, with the blonde hair, the long blonde hair and whatnot, with the short skirt as a uniform. Sasha Calle didn't have none of that. There wasn't any pushback on that. Well, not a lot. You know, there was some, of course, but not as much as for this young lady. And now, coming off of House of the Dragon, I was a little curious about it because I just didn't see Supergirl in her. It wasn't because of her look or anything like that. Of course, she can act. If you watched House of the Dragon, that first season, she's great. She's great on that show, and this is no exception. I thought she was phenomenal as Kara Zor-El. I thought she was really good for this character, for this interpretation of Supergirl. She was perfect. She's not a bubbly, you know, little bouncy around girl that's just flying around saving cats out of a tree. That's not this character. This character has some depth. This character has some weight on her shoulders, you know, dealing with grief of her planet and her parents and her dog and trying to fit in and all these other things is so much on her. And Millie did a phenomenal job of displaying that pain that she was going through and feeling. I felt she was perfect in the role. Her chemistry with Eve Ridley, who plays Rufy in this film, is awesome. Rufy is a character from the Woman of Tomorrow comic book miniseries. So in case a lot of people probably don't know, oh, they created a character. No, she's in the comics. I love their chemistry. I liked her overall. I love the performance and I love the character. This is a character that could have easily been annoying. Easily came off as, why did they put her in here? Why does Supergirl have a sidekick in this movie? It could have easily went in that direction with this character, and it didn't. It didn't. She had her own agency. She had her own mission. She had her own motivations, and it was a conflict between her and Supergirl throughout the entire film. And the way these two bounced off of one another, I thought was perfect for the story they were trying to tell. Jason Momoa, the long-awaited debut of Jason Momoa as Lobo was great. And the reason it was great, it wasn't because Jason Momoa gave the best performance of his career. It wasn't because Lobo is a character that I enjoy from the comics and all that. That wasn't the reason. The reason why it was great is because we got the right amount of Lobo. It wasn't too much and it wasn't too little. It was perfect. It was perfect the amount of time he was on screen in this film. Because at the end of the day, this is a Supergirl movie, not a Lobo movie. So you didn't want to oversaturate this film with Lobo and Jason Momoa as Lobo. What impressed me about Jason Momoa as Lobo, I was fully expecting to see Aquaman in just different makeup. I was expecting to see just another version of his portrayal of Aquaman because I like Jason Momoa. I really do. I love him in everything I've seen him in. Super entertaining. Charisma just blows out of his pores, man. But he's limited. He is limited. And I mean, no disrespect to him. Because he probably could rip my tongue out through my throat. But I'm not talking about he's a horrible actor, but he is who he is. It's not it's nothing special about his performances. But this was really good. I thought he added a little. He put a little more effort in. Now, to be fair, this is the role that he always wanted. He didn't want to be Aquaman, but he took the role. He wanted to be Lobo. That was his dream, to play Lobo. And you could tell that he had the time of his life in playing Lobo, man. He finally realized his dream. And it was a dream to watch him in this role. The cinematography was great. I thought the look of this film was gorgeous. Some of the landscapes in this film really blew my mind. We're supposed to be on different planets, off world, wherever, and it looked amazing. And we all know that it wasn't like they went to another planet to film it. They filmed this, I think, in I'm about to say New England, but in England and Scotland and those places. It just looked gorgeous. It looked like otherworldly. It really did. It looked great. I love the tone of it. I think Craig Gillespie's direction here was fairly well. Didn't really have a problem with the direction. And the story was good. I mean, it was emotional at times. It was funny at times. One thing I will say, it's more serious than I thought going in. Now, it has its jokes. It is funny, comedic moments in it, but it is dark in moments, very, very dark at moments. And that's a good thing. That's not one of my knocks. That's actually a good thing because it sets itself apart from Superman. They came out last year. We're not, that's not the tone you're getting here. And I think that was another thing that kind of threw people off or is throwing people off or didn't appreciate it. It didn't feel like Superman, but it's not supposed to because this isn't Superman. This is Supergirl. We're telling a different story. So it has to look different, feel different, and emote different. And I think the movie did a great job at that. Now, let's get into the negatives of this film that I noticed and kind of takes it down a notch. Let's start off with the villain. The villain, even though the actor, and I can't pronounce his name, good actor, seen him on numerous things, enjoyed him in, it was a TV show that came on HBO with Kate Winslet, and I can't think of the name of that show. I'm drawing blanks all over the place right now. But he was good on that show. Even though the show wasn't all that good, he was good in it. And from there, I seen him pop up on other things that I really enjoy. He wasn't bad as the villain. The villain was menacing. He was a threat. He actually showed that he is a threat to Supergirl and everybody else around him. I can see why people were afraid of this villain. But it just felt like he was underwritten. I guess you could say he was kind of mustache twirly, the cliche villain. Really no motivation behind him. He's just bad. He's just an evil dude, that's it. There was nothing more to him than that. And the reason I don't blame the actor for that, because that's all he was given. And he did a great job with what he was given. I just wanted more from the villain. I wanted to, we didn't have to have a whole backstory and origin of, why he became this way and all this other food. We didn't need all that. But just to give him a little motivation and, why he's doing the things that he's doing. And we didn't get that, and it kind of left it kind of one note, if you will. Another negative would be some of the visual effect shots weren't all that good. And I only noticed it because they had some absolutely great visual effect shots in here. All of the shots in space, like when you see Supergirl flying in space, the effects with her hair and things of that nature, when she's crying in space and you see the tear just, because there's no gravity, of course, and you see the tear come off of her face. Those are beautiful shots. But it's other shots when they're on the planet and she's flying, and it just didn't look good. It didn't look, especially in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX, and you see everything for all its glory in IMAX, and it just did not look good in some of those shots, and kind of took me out of it. And it was in the climax of the film where you're supposed to be getting hyped up and excited and be fully engaged in it, and it just took me out of it. And I was so mad. So mad because it had built up to this, and those visual effect shots were like, oh my God. What are they doing? What happened here? They ran out of money? I don't know what happened here. But that kind of put a damper on the film. And the film is not long. It's not a long movie. If you listen to my reviews, you hear me complaining all the time about the length of movies being too long, and you feel it. This movie wasn't long. This movie is barely over an hour and a half. It's about, I don't know what, about an hour and 45 minutes or something like that. But it felt like 2.5 hours. It felt long. That's not good. That's not good at all. I don't know. And if for the life of me, I can't put my finger on what the issue was. I don't know if it was. Now, there were moments early on in the film. I would say the first act, it took a minute to get out of gear, to really get the story moving. Because once the story started moving, it flew. It started to fly by. But it just took a while to get there, and to say that this wasn't an origin movie, there was no reason to take that much time in the beginning of this movie. Now, I will say there are a few scenes they could have cut out, like Superman, and I'm not spoiling nothing because it's all in the trailers. Yes, David Corenswet returns as Superman for, I guess, cameos, but he's in like 3 scenes. He was in 3 scenes, 2 of which were almost carbon copies of each other. You could have easily cut one of them out. It was no need to have him. It wasn't like he was there in person. It was like video calls, they were FaceTiming. You didn't need it. You didn't need all that. It just took too long to try to make sure, I guess, to drive home the point that this is part of the same universe, to kind of connect everything. But we get it. The dog was there. Crypto was there. We knew that it was connected. Millie Alcock, she showed up at the end of Superman. So we knew this was a connected film. So it was no need to force feed us Superman. It really wasn't. It was a waste of time. But I guess they had to fill the time out, because otherwise this movie probably would have been 90 minutes long. And that's weird within itself. They could have, if you really sat down and read Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, that's a long, it's a series. It's a mini series. It's like 5 or 6 issues. I can't remember how many, but there's a lot of meat on that bone in the comic book that you could have pulled from to kind of fill in the time and kept the audience engaged. But I digress. I'm not advocating for a long 2.5 hour Supergirl movie. I'm just saying, if it was story that you was trying to fill in the blanks with, there was plenty of places you could have pulled the story from. But that's about it. It's really, the movie was what it was. I don't have any other negatives to really point out about the film. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was fun. I thought it was well acted. I thought the fight sequences was great. All the action sequences were awesome. I forgot to include that in my positives as well. The action sequences was off the chain. It was 10 times better than Superman in that regard. I loved the action sequences, and it was brutal, very brutal. These fight sequences, these battles that Kara had to go throughout the film. Hey man, like I said, I'm always marching to the beat of my own drum. I guess I'm gonna march to the beat again on this one. Supergirl gets a letter grade of a B minus. Yeah, I don't know what people tripping on. I don't know what movie you you was expecting to see. I mean, it's a comic book movie at the end of the day. I mean, it's not the end of the world. And out of Supergirl movies, it's the best one I've seen. And so, and I know that's a low bar to clear because you only had one other Supergirl movie to go off of, and that was the 1984 one starring Helen Slater. And that movie was horrible. So as long as you was better than that, in my book, it's a win. So congratulations to everybody over there at DC Studios. But that's one man's humble opinion. I would love to know your thoughts about Supergirl, and what did you think of Millie Alcock's portrayal of Kara Zor-El in this film? Let me know. You can subscribe to the kbradionetwork.com website where all of my previous episodes are available. You can also search for me on social media. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Subscribe to the KB Radio Network on YouTube and like this video as well. Don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of DC Studios' Supergirl. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.